President Lee Jae-myung is set to visit Japan for a summit with Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi next Tuesday. This will be the second time they'll hold a meeting following their first talks in Gyeongju last October. The final hearing of former President Yoon Suk-yeol's insurrection trial began this morning, and all eyes are on what punishment he may face, with life imprisonment a possibility. Once today's hearing concludes, the case will move to the court's verdict, which is widely expected next month. As the U.S. discusses options to acquire Greenland, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has warned Europe to take President Donald Trump seriously. He says if European allies do not take the security of the island more seriously, the United States may step in. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. President Lee Jae-myung will visit Japan next week for talks with Japanese Prime Minister Takaichi. The Blue House announced this morning that the meeting will take place on Tuesday afternoon in Nara Prefecture, Takaichi's hometown. The two leaders are expected to discuss regional and global issues, as well as ways to strengthen cooperation in the economy, society, and culture. This will mark their second summit following their first talks in Gyeongju ahead of the APEC leaders meeting last October. On Wednesday, President Lee will meet with the local Korean community before returning home. And President Lee Jae-myung presided over a weekly meeting with his aides on Thursday, the day after returning from his state visit to China. He called for pragmatic diplomacy, saying there are no permanent foes or friends in the international order. Our Yoon Jung-min reports.
영원한 적도, 영원한 우방도, 또 영원한 규칙도 없는 냉혹한 국제 질서 속에서 대한민국의 운명은 우리 스스로 개척하는 국익 중심 실용 외교에 달려 있습니다.
The South Korean president made an assessment of his four-day state visit to China, noting that the trip served to fully restore Seoul-Beijing relations, while the Blue House, citing foreign media reports, assessed that it displayed the Lee Jae-myung-style pragmatic diplomacy. Thursday's weekly meeting with the senior aides was more than just that.
2026년이 성장의 대전환을 통한 국가 대도약의 출발점이 되도록 이념과 진영을 넘어 국민의 역량을 하나로 모아가겠습니다.
President Lee Jae-myung underlined policies to bring changes that make people feel an actual difference in their everyday lives, while noting the need to shift away from heavy concentration of resources on certain groups or regions.
특히 지방, 중소벤처, 스타트업, 그리고 청년 등 상대적으로 소외됐던 영역들이 새로운 성장의 축으로 자리 잡을 수 있도록
Topics included ways to prepare for a transition to the AI era, checking what's needed, and bolstering related international cooperation.
To turn AI into our growth engine and the infrastructure of our daily lives, we discussed a comprehensive strategy, such as securing infrastructure and seeking new industries.
The meeting came amid intensifying global competition over energy, as some watchers view the recent U.S. attack on Venezuela as linked to oil. President Lee also instructed his officials to brace for a change in energy paradigms, citing increasing global uncertainties. Yoon Jung-min, Arirang News.
The main criminal trial determining whether the December 3rd declaration of emergency martial law constitutes insurrection has just begun its final phase. The Seoul Central District Court is holding closing arguments on Friday in the case that charges former President Yoon Suk-yeol with leading an insurrection, alongside senior military and police officials accused of carrying out key roles. The closing session comes 402 days after the martial law declaration and 341 days after Yoon became the first sitting president in South Korean history to be arrested and indicted. Prosecutors are presenting their final arguments and sentencing requests, followed by closing statements from the defense and the defendants themselves. Once today's hearing concludes, the case will move to the court's verdict, which is expected next month. U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance warned Europe to take President Donald Trump seriously on Greenland, as Washington weighs options ranging from security pressure to direct payments to Greenlanders, despite Danish objections. The moves come as U.S. intervention in Venezuela deepens following the seizure of Nicolas Maduro, with Trump signaling a prolonged role. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance has warned European leaders to take President Donald Trump seriously over his push to bring Greenland under U.S. control, as Washington signals it is prepared to act if security concerns are not addressed. Speaking at a White House briefing on Thursday, Vance said the United States believes Europe has failed to adequately safeguard Greenland's strategic importance. He warned that if European allies do not take the security of the island more seriously, the United States may step in. Greenland occupies a key position between Europe and North America and plays a critical role in the U.S. ballistic missile defense system. The island is also rich in rare earth minerals and other resources, aligning with Washington's broader effort to reduce dependence on China for strategic materials. U.S. officials have discussed a range of options for acquiring Greenland. According to sources familiar with the matter, the White House has considered offering lump sum payments to Greenlanders as part of a bid to persuade the population to secede from Denmark and potentially join the U.S. Internal discussions have included figures ranging from $10,000 to $100,000 per person, though no final amount or mechanism has been decided. Officials say the proposals are among several ideas under consideration, including the possible use of U.S. military power. The debate over Greenland comes as U.S. actions elsewhere raise fresh concerns among allies. With U.S. forces carrying out a military operation that seized Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro, President Trump said U.S. intervention in the South American nation could last for years. In an interview with the New York Times on Wednesday, Trump said only time will tell how long the United States will oversee Venezuela's governance following the operation. He did not specify when elections might be held to replace the interim administration led by Maduro ally Delcy Rodriguez. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, European leaders and the United Nations have voiced strong concern over the United States' recent actions that appear to, quote, turn away from its allies and subvert global rules. Our Oh Soo-young has more.
French President Emmanuel Macron has warned that the United States under Donald Trump is turning away from its allies and breaking with the international rules it once promoted. Macron made the remarks on Thursday amid growing uncertainty over Washington's global role and its commitment to the rule of law. This as the Trump administration continues to issue statements on controlling Greenland, a territory of fellow NATO member Denmark.
The U.S. is an established power, but one that is gradually turning away from some of its allies and freeing itself from international rules it promoted not long ago, whether in trade, certain security matters, or some forums.
Germany's president delivered a similarly blunt assessment. Frank-Walter Steinmeier warned that there is a breakdown of shared values with Washington, which was Europe's most important partner in shaping the world order. Steinmeier said U.S. behavior represented a second historic rupture of the global system after Russia's annexation of Crimea and its full-scale invasion of Ukraine. He called for stronger collective action to prevent lawlessness on the world stage. As questions swirl around the future of U.S. global engagement, the United Nations has expressed regret over Washington's decision to withdraw from dozens of international and UN bodies, including a key climate framework and an organization promoting gender equality and women's empowerment. Trump said the bodies operate contrary to U.S. national interests.
The Secretary General regrets the announcement by the White House regarding the United States' decision to withdraw from a number of United Nations entities. The UN is an organization of 193 member states, 2 observer states. It is in the interest of all these member states and the 2 observers to defend the principles that they themselves have created.
The US is the largest contributor to the UN's regular budget, paying the maximum assessed rate of 22%. The regular budget for 2026 totals around $3.45 billion, covering political missions, humanitarian operations, disarmament efforts, and economic and social affairs. The US made no payments to the regular budget last year, meaning it owes roughly $1.5 billion, according to the UN spokesperson. While the US Constitution allows presidents to join treaties with the approval of 2/3 of the Senate, it does not clearly define the process for withdrawal, raising questions over whether a future president could simply reverse course. Oh Soo-young, Arirang News.
The United Nations has forecast global economic growth at 2.7% this year, slightly slower than in 2025 and below pre-pandemic averages. In its latest outlook released on Thursday, the UN said the global economy remains resilient despite higher tariffs, supported by solid consumer spending, accommodative monetary policy, and stable labor markets. However, it warned that trade growth is likely to slow in the near term. South Korea's economy is projected to grow 1.8% in 2026 and 2% in 2027, broadly in line with the Bank of Korea's forecast, as easing inflation and recovering domestic demand provide support. The South Korean economy remains under strain despite a rebound in consumption, given the prolonged slump in manufacturing. According to the Korea Development Institute's report for January, production is growing but at a slower pace as sentiment within the manufacturing industry hovers low. The construction industry also remains in the doldrums. Output fell 17% on-year in November. Consumption, however, is keeping the economy afloat. Retail sales and service sector output are reportedly improving for the 5th straight month. And recently, companies have started using robots equipped with artificial intelligence around us in various ways. Not only delivering food on campuses, AI robots are expected to be increasingly deployed in daycare centers. Our Tae-yoon reports.
A wheeled robot stops in front of a cafe. When the ordered drink is ready, a staff member loads it into the robot's cargo compartment. This autonomous delivery robot usually waits at a charging station, and when an order comes in, it heads out for delivery at a maximum speed of 7 kilometers per hour. It stops at crosswalks when it detects traffic signals and avoids pedestrians or obstacles in its path. Customers don't pay any delivery fee, and the cafe owner's commission is half the usual rate of existing delivery platforms. Meanwhile, a person lying on the ground shouts for help. Upon detecting the sound, the robot checks the person's status and immediately contacts a guardian with an alert. It is an AI robot and monitors health and provides assistance. When a robot patrolling the surrounding spots a flame, it promptly reports the fire to the control center. It patrols areas that humans cannot easily reach, checks for intruders, and detects safety hazards like fires in advance. Robots, which are gradually becoming part of our daily lives, are also being used in care settings. Gyeongsangbuk-do Province will begin deploying them next year, focusing on local care centers. They assist not only with children's education but also support caregivers in various areas, including safety and health. AI robots equipped with cutting-edge technology are attracting attention for their potential role as assistants, enhancing convenience for consumers and shop owners while filling gaps in caregiving staff. 차윤경, Arirang News.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. A deadly shooting by federal immigration agents in Minnesota has ignited protests across the United States. Video footage showing an ICE agent shooting 37-year-old Renee Nicole Good during an anti-ICE protest in Minneapolis on Wednesday has spread online and fueled nationwide demonstrations. Vice President J.D. Vance defended the agent's actions on Thursday, calling the shooting self-defense and labeling the case as a federal matter after the FBI took control of the investigation. Minnesota officials pushed back, accusing federal authorities of blocking state involvement. The White House has vowed to continue ICE operations, while local leaders demand an independent investigation. Protests erupted in Iran's capital Tehran on Thursday night after a call by the country's exiled crown prince for mass demonstrations. Crowds chanted from rooftops and flooded streets, tearing flags and setting fire to symbols linked to the current government while calling for a return to monarchy-led rule. Iranian authorities cut internet and phone services almost immediately, signaling preparations for a crackdown. The unrest follows weeks of nationwide protests driven by economic collapse, including a currency crash and market shutdowns. Human rights groups confirmed at least 41 deaths and over 2,000 arrests as the unrest spread to rural provinces. U.S. President Donald Trump has warned he will hit Iran very hard if peaceful protesters are killed. Saudi Arabia has accused the United Arab Emirates of secretly smuggling a wanted Yemeni separatist leader out of Yemen. Saudi officials on Thursday said Aidalus al-Jubaidi, the leader of the Southern Transitional Council, fled by boat to Somalia before flying to Abu Dhabi. The UAE has not publicly responded to the accusation. This comes as the Saudi-UAE partnership in the Yemen war unravels, with separatist forces advancing and Riyadh launching airstrikes against the group. NASA has decided to shorten a mission aboard the International Space Station after an astronaut experienced a medical issue. The agency said on Thursday that the four-member U.S., Japanese, Russian crew will return to Earth days earlier than original plans, canceling scheduled spacewalks. NASA said the medical issue arose on Wednesday and stressed the astronaut is now stable, describing the move as a precaution, not an emergency evacuation. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
It was another cool start for the commute this morning, but temperatures will climb nicely this afternoon and we'll get a brief break from the cold on Saturday. But that pause will not last long as another round of freezing air returns on Sunday. However, rain or snow will begin tonight in Gyeonggi-do and Gangwon-do provinces, then spread nationwide over the weekend. Parts of Gangwon-do and Jeollado provinces could see up to 15 centimeters of heavy snowfall. The capital region will get 1 to 3 centimeters, mainly on Saturday. But this afternoon will be much warmer than yesterday, topping out at 6 degrees under cloudy skies here in Seoul, Daegu, Gyeongju, both topping out at 7 degrees Celsius. Now plan accordingly for your weekend. There will be snow and freezing temperatures. Then brace for an intense cold snap through next week with more rain or snow expected across Korea.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.